I'm your host, Greg Todd, and I'm excited to welcome my guest today, Miss Renee Dalo. How are you, Renee?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's we were talking a little bit before we started about the craziness of this past year, and I think it's okay for us to all acknowledge that we're excited that the world is getting back a little bit to normal
Yes.
and back out on the road, and maybe not doing quite as many weddings as we're both used to doing this time of year, but we're going to make up for it come the fall, it sounds like.
I'm just gearing up with a lot of caffeine. I'm just
Yes.
priming my body with copious amounts of caffeine.
Yeah, go ahead and staying up for like 16 hours a day on
Yeah, just
Thursday,
standing
Friday, and
up.
Saturday,
Just
just kind of getting used to
I'm just training. Yeah, just training.
it. Switching from heels to flats and back and forth, right? Just getting the feet ready.
Greg, you know it. You know intimately what this is like. Yes.
So good. Well, I'm so glad to welcome you in, and I'm loving the topic that we talked about getting into today, and just how to engage your market, how to embrace competition and your competitors. And I'm just curious to hear exactly what you mean by that, and how we could apply that for everybody. And just so you know, we've got kind of a really good mix of people who listen to the podcast.
Great.
We've been going for over 20 episodes now, so about
Great.
4 months. And it's a kind of a mix of the wedding people who know that I'm kind of in that world and know that I do wedding marketing, and then just another whole niche of people that are just small business owners that are still probably trying to do most of the stuff themselves, maybe
Right.
farming out a little bit of their marketing, but still intimately involved in every decision, budget, and the whole thing. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go
Sure.
through. And I would love to hear kind of what exactly you have in mind with this new theory.
So it's interesting when we talk about competition, right? Because people have a lot of feelings about it. Right. They have a lot of like I say competition, and sometimes some people get a big like pit in their stomach where they're immediate anxiety and like, oh, that makes me feel challenged. I don't like it. And other people thrive on it, and you say competition and they're like, yes,
Yes.
tell me who I'm competing with, right? And both I'm not here to talk anybody out of their feelings about things, because I think that's you have to know the baseline of where you come from, right?
Right.
My background is I was a professional actor. I did professional musical theater out of New York City for years, which really means that I spent my days auditioning.
Yeah.
I spent my days, I used to have this little rolling suitcase, and I had this red dress that I still kept for nostalgia. There's no way I'm fitting into it now, but it's in my closet. And I had a handful of friends that were all the same. We were all doing the same thing, and we would go from audition to audition. I spent my days being told no,
Yeah.
right? Majority of the time. So
Hmm.
my threshold for rejection and embracing competition has always been fairly high, because when I was going to these auditions, I was seeing the same girls who
Yeah.
looked exactly like me. And at some point I said, this is so silly that we don't talk to each other. Like, why are we sitting here in a silent, empty room? So and I think this was just my personality, just some instinct I had in that moment 20 something years ago, where I was like, do you guys want to go get coffee after this? It was a particularly grueling audition process. And like, to be fair, some of the girls were like, no, but a few of them were like, yeah, I see you like every day. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
know, what is your name? Right. And it just seemed like a comforting place to land, to say, you and I have the same situation. We have the same circumstances. Why
Hmm.
can't we just go have a coffee and bitch about it together? Right.
Right. Yeah.
And and so there's a part of community of competition that really brings you your community, right? If
Yeah.
you can embrace your competition and still honor what makes you different, and do it in a kind way, like no one knows what you go through like the people who do what you do.
Right.
And I know the old school mentality is to be like, well, you can't talk to your competition because they'll steal from you. I mean, sure. I'm sure that there's somebody out there who has that mentality.
Hmm.
But if you're doing the work of building real relationships, then what's going to happen in any industry is what's going to happen to me in my old audition days, where the next time I saw one of the girls I went to coffee with, she goes, hey, so and so is in the room, and they don't like when you sing blah blah blah, composer, so change your music if you're gonna. Oh,
Yeah.
thanks so much. Because it at some point it stops mattering, you versus them specifically, right? At
Right.
some point you have to elevate and say, let's get, like, everyone should be better, right?
Hmm.
And once you have a relationship with someone, like a real relationship with someone, right, you want that person to succeed if you're
Yeah.
a kind, good person. So that on the base level is where all of this came from. When I came into the wedding industry, I really didn't know any different. I just thought like, well, I'm a planner. Who else is a planner? Let's talk. At first, 13 years ago, no, I mean, very few people wanted to be friends with me. They looked at me like I was like an idiot. They were like, who is this? Who is she? Right. And I'm persistent. I'm tenacious. I just kept going. And what really ended up happening is that over this time, especially in my local market, people were starting to see that like I roll deep with a bunch of wedding planners. Like when I roll into a networking event, it's like six of us rolling in.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what those six are? My good friends,
Yeah.
my best source of referrals. Do you know how much business we get from each other?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're my first, if I'm busy, if it's a wedding that I know I'm not suited for, my first line of referral are these other planners because
Yeah.
I trust them.
Yeah. You know that they've gone through what you're going through.
Absolutely. And like they do the same for me. And some of the best weddings I've ever done have been because Margot was busy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And she's like, oh,
Yeah.
Renee's got you. So
Yeah.
it's like we have to get over this old school mentality of like everyone's out to get us and steal from us. No, no. If you really cultivate a strong community of other people who do what you do, no matter what you do, it's just going to be better. You'll
Yeah.
share trade secrets, you will share referrals, you will share other, I mean, especially for wedding planners, right? Like we have to know everyone. When this pandemic started, that core group of planners started a Facebook thread that has been a literal lifeline because now we're saying things like, hey, who is at the Fairmont Hotel now? Because we can't keep track of any of our
Right.
vendor
You can't keep up
partners.
with it. Yeah.
So it's really been a godsend. And so I don't know. I just feel like the more we talk about this, not just in wedding land, but all over the place, I just think there's way more power and it's a way more modern way to do business to just be friends with the people who do what you do.
Yeah. And I think that's so good. I've seen this with marketing. When I first got started, it was kind of like I don't know if you know my story or not, but I just dove in taking care of Cece's stuff
I
and it
know.
kind of
Yeah.
turned into something else. And
Yeah.
so I was taking every course I could get my hands on and sleeping 3 hours a night, working a corporate job during the
Yeah.
day and then
You were hustling,
freelancing at
man.
night and then weddings on the weekend. Like, I mean, I think there was 6 months where I didn't have a day off, like 7 days a week for 6 straight months doing one of the three jobs,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but then I started to figure out that I don't really want to do all of these things. Like there's so much that marketing encompasses
Yeah.
that why can't I partner with someone else? And the best partnership I have is a guy here in Birmingham, actually, luckily enough. We ended up
Oh,
being
that's
in the
great.
same market, which usually doesn't happen,
Right.
but he is the go out there and get new business PR guy. He's actually my podcast editor. He'll hear
Oh
this.
my gosh,
Yeah.
amazing.
So he's a DJ by trade, so loves, being out there and getting the deal. But to get any business, he was having to sell social media and he doesn't really want to do it.
Right.
Well, I don't love being in the spotlight, going out and necessarily getting cold call new business, but
Right.
I love doing the analytics and the actual managing of the social media content calendar.
Yes.
So he goes out, finds new business. I do the work. If I find somebody that needs PR work, I move it over to him. And they never know. It's billed under whichever one of us made the contact. So they
Yep.
think they're working with whoever they originally talked to.
And as long as the work gets done.
Nobody
Yeah.
cares. Yeah. And
It's
so,
similar with my planner group. And honestly, like when I say planner group, it's a very unofficial grouping of
right.
planners, right? It's just like these are my people, sort of. I use this example all the time, but a few years ago, I got an inquiry from a lovely couple who described their ideal wedding as like an Alice in Wonderland meets steampunk garden wedding in Topanga Canyon with like an EDM DJ. Like they were very specific about what they wanted.
Yes, they
But
knew what
as
they
I read
wanted.
it, I thought, oh, none of this is me. Like, I cannot authentically produce this event for you. I can research and do my best, but this is not my wheelhouse. And before I even finished the email, I went, oh, I'm sending them to Holly.
Yeah.
I was available on the date. Could I have used the booking? Sure. By the end, I was like, you know what? Thank you so much for reaching out. I appreciate you. I don't think I'm the best person for you. You're going to need to talk to, and they loved her. They booked her. And that to me was like, no skin off my nose, right?
Right.
And I think that's where the power comes in, right? And you understanding who you are as a business owner. I think that's one of that really is the work of entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
Like the overall work is like really knowing yourself, being really honest with yourself about the things you care about and the things you don't care about. I haven't done my own bookkeeping in like 6 years. I do not care. Like
Right.
it gets done, I check in on it, I pay someone well for it, great. But like there are, once you know who you are and what you care about and who you serve well, everything else is a referral. And if you can
Yeah.
refer them to your competition, even better.
Even better. Yeah. And I think you kind of alluded to this a little bit before I started that last thing is it helps the whole industry. Like
Yes.
it helps as a whole
Yes.
when you're more like this. And so let's pivot just a little bit here. So for the people listening, how do you go about you said you were persistent. So we know that's part of it, but how do you go about how would you recommend somebody that kind of wanted to cultivate this community in their market? What's the first step? Is it a network group that already exists? Is it just
Mhm.
reaching out to a competitor? Like, how would you recommend kind of starting this flow?
So I'll tell you how I did it, although it was many years ago. It ended up, I mean, it feels like I did it organically, but even at the time, I was very purposefully like making these, connections. So I'm an extrovert, and I say that just because I know a lot of times when I give this advice, introverts are always like, yeah, but that works for you, but not for me. And so, like, caveat, fine. I'm a crazy extrovert, and I'm also very much willing to throw myself off a cliff and see what happens,
Right.
metaphorically speaking, right? Like, I'm not afraid of that. I always have my own back. It's fine.
Yeah.
When I really in earnest started Moxie Bright and knew that as a planner, my job is to know people, I made it my business. And you could ask my husband, he's still mad about it to this day. Not mad, but like I was out every night. I found something to go to every night. Now, that is going to be a little bit different in today because of the pandemic, but
Hmm.
still, things are opening up. So I used to joke with my friend Holly that we would go to the opening of an envelope,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If there was any networking happening anywhere, we made it our business to go. And I say we because really early on, Holly and I met at a Zumba class. We did not meet in a wedding industry, anything. And and we met at Zumba. We were always going to the same Zumba classes. She said to me finally, like, I'm gonna friend you on Facebook. And when she did, she was like, "You're a wedding planner? I'm a wedding planner." And I was like, "You're a wedding planner? I never see you at anything." She goes, "What things?" And I was like, "Girl, come on, come with me." So
Yeah.
then I found myself one person. We live nearby each other. I just said, like, this is the plan. We're gonna go to everything. So I'd say, even if you're an introvert, just find one person, right? One person who can be like your wingman to be like,
Yeah.
we're going to go to these networking events because it is much easier to walk in with someone,
Absolutely.
even for an extrovert, right?
Hmm.
And we went to everything all the time, everything. And then we would start reaching out to those. I'd be like, who I really want to get to know is like, maybe let's see if Margot wants to go to this with us. And we wouldn't arrive together, but we'd be like, hey, we're going to go to the Dart DJ party. Are you going? Yes. Okay. I'll see you there. So that when we got there, I could be like, hey, come over and sit with us.
Right.
And yeah, it kind of sounds like a high school lunchroom, right? But this is how you make the connection, right? You intend to meet that person at the event. You spend most of your time talking to that one person. I am not a big proponent of like the spray and pray here. I'm going to give out 90 business cards and see what sticks. I'd
Right.
rather go to an event. And this is, I think, why we ended up going to so many is that we would go to an event and we would connect with one or two or three new people max, and then we'd see the people we met last time and reinforce that.
Hmm.
And there is something about that repetition. You become someone who is known for showing up, which especially in LA is really rare.
Oh, I bet.
People are flakes here, y'all. Actually, people are flakes everywhere, but
Yeah.
especially in LA. If there's a
Yeah.
better event to go to or whatever, people say, "Oh yeah, I'll be there," and then they never show up. There are
Hmm.
a handful of people in my market who I know is like, "Oh, you're never going to show up."
Right.
Right. Be the person that shows up. And because even if someone hasn't worked with you yet, and you're someone who they can reliably see at these events, they start thinking of you as someone who is reliable, even if they've never worked with you.
Yeah, that's such great advice because we see that even here, and there's way less to do in Birmingham than there is in LA.
Yeah.
But I can almost guarantee, I'm the VP of marketing for our Alabama Weddings and Event Professionals group,
Nice.
and I'll send out the invite and get an RSVP back. I'm like, there's no way they're showing up. Like, I'm not even counting them in the catering number because I know nobody from that business is really going to show up. They're RSVPing because it hit their inbox and they feel like they're supposed to.
Right. Or they want to be the kind of person who does, right? And then something happens, time management is bad. I will tell you this, because when I talk about this a lot, people are like, yeah, well, you must not have had very much business. Oh, no, I had a tremendous amount of business. What I would do is work during the day, get whatever I had to do to get ready, because, you know, everything in LA is at least an hour away.
Mm-hmm.
As a woman, obviously hair and makeup had to be done, outfits, the whole nine, right? I would just schedule myself until that point. I would block out the chunk of time I needed to get ready and travel. I would come home at like 10 p.m. and still work.
Yeah.
Like when you're talking like you hustled, like that's part of the hustle, man. Do I wish I had gotten more sleep those years? Sure. But I built this business
Right.
on this mentality, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it worked. Like when people are, you know, people come to me for coaching now, for other, you know, other wedding planners, and like, how did you do it? It was so fast for you. I'm like, I just worked it,
Yeah.
constantly worked it. I don't know that there's another way because that's how it worked for me.
Yeah. And I think when people look at it like that, and it probably wasn't as fast as they think it was in your world, but
Yeah.
even if it was, if you take the number of nights you went out building these relationships
Yeah.
compared to what people do, like a lot of people think if they go once a month to some kind of networking event, that's enough. If you're going 3 and 4 nights a week, that's 12 times in a month.
Yeah.
You've already done more in that 1 month than they're going to do in the year.
Yeah. And
I
there
think
also is,
people forget that.
they do. And I think also people say things like, well, I went to, like, I'm the president of WIPA SoCal. So I know this seems very self-serving, but my first networking meeting ever was a WIPA meeting. And I was scared out of my pants to go. Like I literally spent like 3 hours on an outfit. I had like all the high school anxiety where like, no one's going to talk to me. And I was going with a friend. But I still was like, this is going to be bad. And I was so quiet the whole time and I was just taking things in. People say to me all the time, like, well, I went to WIPA once and it didn't work. I'm sorry, you went once?
Yeah.
No, you got to go every single time we do a thing because
Yeah.
you need to like make yourself part of that community. And I think the more you understand your competition, right, the more you can sell. I mean, there are like 3 wedding planners who I typically am always like up against, right? But I know what makes me different than Jessica. I can talk to a client and they don't have to tell me anymore. I already know that they've met with Jessica or they're going to meet with her. But Jessica and I are so different and our aesthetic is so different that I can almost tell within the first 15 minutes if they're a me or if they're Jessica.
Yeah.
Right. And the ones who go to Jessica, great. Like I
Yeah.
want us all to succeed because
Mhm.
I want to, that means, right, for me that I exist in a market that is thriving and that if she can succeed, then the next one is me. Like it's a
Yeah.
numbers game at some point. And I think that mentality definitely comes from the acting world where you're like,
Yeah.
this wasn't my show. Maybe the next one, you know?
Yeah. I think I really learned that really well from Cece. Like she really has a good, they're not my people.
Yeah.
I'm not for them. I'm not for everybody. If you want
Yeah.
a traditional, prim and proper, quiet
Right.
floral designer that's just going to like show up, drop it off, and you never knew they were there,
Right.
that's not my client.
Nope.
So, and when she embraced that, and really took on the hot pink and the wearing
Yes.
the flower in her hair like
Flower.
she had
Yeah.
always done, when she
Yeah.
did that, it really, she's got a whole talk. I think she's giving it at Wedding MBA this time, like
Yeah.
that she's
Nice.
developed on like repelling as much as you attract. And
100%.
there's so many people, especially when you're new in business, you're scared to run anybody off.
Yes,
And
well, you just want to serve everybody because you want the
yeah,
experience, right? But then after a while, you realize that you're not supposed to be for everyone. And it's not just for people who have a biggest personality as Cece,
yeah,
right? It isn't just for people who have such a defined sense of self. Like the nuances between me and Jessica, it is nuanced, right?
hmm,
On paper, you might go, these are similar, but when you meet us, when you know us, the approach is different. And so it's okay to embrace those nuances. You
right,
don't have to, I mean, Cece's a huge personality. And so people might hear that and go, well, that works for her.
right.
Because everyone's
No,
very always willing
it's
to
even worked for
discuss.
me,
Right.
and I'm the opposite. I am
Yeah.
as opposite from her as you can get. And so, um, and it's worked for me,
Yeah.
going back to the Brandon example, like
Yeah.
being okay with not feeling like you have to do something to get the business that you want, like do
100%.
something you don't want to do just because I want to keep this little, I want to put the fence around this thing that I do like to do over here.
Yeah. And
I
I want to say this too, because I know I'm talking a lot from the lens of like wedding planning, but I'm also an educator.
mhm,
And like the education world, like we are thick as thieves. We know each other, we support each other. We
Yes.
champion each other's ideas. We collaborate. Like the bundle that we did 2 bundles with all these educators. Like there was never a moment where someone was like, I can't do the bundle because my competitors are in it. Opposite. They were like, sign me up. How do we know each other? We're in half of us are in a mastermind group together now. Like we really took it and ran with it because we understand that we are all better together. And like we talked about earlier, having all the educators know one another and know what we're working on, no one's stealing. In
Right.
fact, we're going, oh, wait, or is that your topic? Okay, then either I can help you with it, interview me for it, or I'll just send people your way when they ask me for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's only
And
so much we can all do at the end of the day. We not all of us can can cover every single topic and every single thing there is to do. Like I know Christina Berrigan and Cece are
yeah,
friends.
uh, big friends. Yeah.
They're both floral educators. Like this is what you want, people. You
Hmm.
want your educators to know one another.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I got to know Alea Harris a little bit.
Oh,
And, you would
obsessed with Alea.
you would think, we both do basically the same thing, but
Yes.
we've learned so much about what works and what doesn't work by
Mhm.
just going, oh, so you've already tried that course and it bombed? Okay, well then maybe I'll shelf that one because I've got these 3 other ideas that I want to
Yes.
try. Or
And
maybe I'll
like,
put a different spin on it because when
right.
you did it 2 years ago, there was not a pandemic, there wasn't this, there wasn't
Right.
that. So now maybe it's more relevant.
Right. And like, Amber Anderson and I from Refined for Wedding Planners, we're thick as thieves. We literally talk all day, every day, either Facebook Messenger or Voxer. And like, I intimately know what's going on with her business. She knows me. And we really talk about like, what are we seeing out there? Like, what do I think people need? Like, oh, I'm feeling like everyone's really burnt out. Oh, yeah. And like, it's a godsend to have those kind of
Yeah.
conversations because again, same idea. No one knows what it is like to be an educator except other educators because we can say to some like, did you get this email? Like
Yeah.
this
What
is a lot. We
what are
get a
they
lot
even
of
asking for?
we get a lot of weird emails. I get a lot of
Yeah.
emails, guys, a lot of emails. And so people are always like, do you answer the emails? I'm like, some of them don't, I don't know how to answer some of them.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too that even people and this would apply to anybody listening, you assume people know what you do. Like you
Oh,
assume the people in your life know
big
what you
time.
do, and it's not true. Like I sold mattresses for almost a decade, and there were still people in BNI networking groups that I went to every week that you stood up and said what you do that would go buy a mattress somewhere else and then be like, "Oh, I didn't know you sold mattresses." And I'm like, every week I stand up and say, "I'm the district sales manager for Mattress King.
Yeah.
If anybody in the room needs help with a mattress, my ideal at the end of the meeting, you say your ideal client is anyone looking for a better night's sleep
Yeah.
every
And
week."
still, some people
And
didn't get the message.
still, the
Yeah.
person sitting next to me for 6 straight
It's like, what?
meetings
Huh?
said, "Oh, we just bought a new one from so and so." And I'm like, I didn't know that's what you did. I hear you say you're a sales manager, but I didn't put the connection together.
Because people are not listening the way we think they are, right?
Right.
And also, I think as humans, most of us have like a humility bias, right? Where we don't want to talk about ourselves too much because then we think that the internet, the world is going to be like, well, isn't she full of herself talking about her podcast every week? But
Right.
it's like people need to hear about it. I mean, I've been doing my show for 2 years and I was just in Arizona speaking at a WIPA event, and someone after the fact said, I didn't know you had a podcast. And I was like, and meanwhile, it was on the slide. The final slide was like, listen to the show every Thursday. And then later she was like, so you have a podcast? And I was like, yeah. Which is always funny to me because, like, in the cocktail hour, someone came up to me and they were like, I knew that was you by your voice. So it's like you have these two
Yeah.
competing things. And it's like, I think we all have to get over the fact of like, this is probably a different conversation as far as marketing goes, but like, talk about your stuff
Yes.
every single time you have the opportunity because people don't know. And humility is not going to get you
No,
anywhere.
and I think the other thing we forget is that people don't listen until they need what you're offering.
100%.
So that guy that
100%.
needed a mattress had tuned out that I was a mattress guy for years because he didn't need
Yep.
one. And so then when he needed one,
Yeah.
maybe I wasn't at that meeting the week before they bought or
And
whatever.
see, that's the thing, especially when we talk about like email marketing, right? Like you
Mhm.
email every week. I'm like, not everybody opens it every week, but there's going to be one week where I talk about something that that person needs right then.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm doing a disservice if I don't talk about it every week,
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah.
you know?
It's so good. And for the people who get annoyed that you're talking about yourself too much, they'll move on.
They'll
Like
move on.
and
Again,
that
going back to Cece's, we're not for everyone.
right. And I hate the biggest thing that I talk about in business. I used to talk about this as a manager. I managed Lowe's Home Improvement for almost a decade. And I would say we don't make rules for the exceptions.
Yes.
So often we build in these things in our business and we make this process to take care of this one thing that happened to us once,
Yep.
that the likelihood it'll ever happen again is
Yeah,
slim to none. But now you've built this whole process to prevent that bad thing from happening to you
it's
again.
true.
And we do it in relationships, we do it in business, and it just makes no sense because you end up spending so much of your valuable time and resource on something that's not going to it's kind of like the whole idea that's become more popular lately, and I'm glad of, just dive into your strengths. Stop
Mhm.
spending so much time focused on your weaknesses because
Yeah.
you're only going to marginally improve them anyway. So just
Right. I mean,
go
that's
all
why it's
in on
like
what you're good at.
hire out your weaknesses, dive into what you're good at,
Yeah.
because
So
otherwise you're just going to always feel like you're behind or like you're not measuring up to whatever preconceived whatever you have in your head,
yeah,
right?
that's so good. Man, it's been a good topic, and it's
We
it's
went
kind of
all over the
yeah,
place.
it's all over the place, but I think it all comes back to the community and being willing to
Always.
understand. And I think the thing you said that I can't wait to kind of summarize when I go back and look at this episode, but I think you saying you've got to know who you are and who your
100%.
business is. And when you know that, that takes care of a lot of these other questions that we're trying to answer. That it's interesting that I've never really thought of it that way, but a lot of the questions we answer on the podcast and even on all my email stuff is symptoms.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
really the core problem. The core problem is that nobody's identified who they are and who they want to be.
And it is like sort of daunting work. Like when you say that, it
Hmm.
feels like, what's the meaning of life? Like it's not a small question.
Right.
And it also evolves. So like I think for anyone listening, if you're in your business for a while and you feel like something's not connecting, something's not working, you're not booking the right clients, or you're booking but you're booking these weddings or any kind of business that you're like, it's just adjacent to where you want to be. That's because you've probably changed as a person and you haven't changed
Yeah.
your business to reflect that. And that happened to me, and it happens to everyone. You evolve, your style evolves, your level of skill evolves, especially
Hmm.
for creatives like florists or stationers. Like
Yes.
the stuff you're doing in year one, by year 10, if you're still doing year one work, you're going to be bored out of your mind
Or out of business
or
if
out
you're
of
still
business.
doing. And I think the other thing too that for the people that are in the wedding kind of creative space listening, the thing that we really had to come to grips with is even if you make a change, those clients are a year from now.
Oh, even more sometimes.
So
Yeah.
you don't like we talk about that on social media. Like you'll
Yeah.
see that we have the fun, you have your little cliques of people that run together, and
Sure.
you'll be like, why are so and so sharing so many pictures with so and so? They don't even work together. Well, that's because they're getting all the images back from 6 or 8 months ago. You're not
Yeah.
seeing the work that they're currently doing and the new relationships they've built because they've gone to a meeting that they took the chance and they went and met someone new. That's
Yeah.
not reflected in the highlight reel on social media yet.
Not
It's
yet.
happening in real time, but it's
Right.
not reflected yet. And so some people that only watch the internet groupings
Yeah.
think these people are still thick as thieves when in reality they've moved on to someone else, and you just haven't been at a wedding where you figured that out yet.
And especially things are skewed because of the pandemic. Like
Hmm.
I know you guys were a little bit more open, but like in LA, we were shut down
Right.
solid 15 months. So there's no new content.
Right.
I'm posting photos from 2017. Like,
Hmm.
look at this stuff I found in the archives. Look at this one, this photographer that I haven't seen since. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's not necessarily, especially now, a good arbiter of community, because
Yeah.
we're just trying to keep it going. But
Yeah.
I think once we kick in again, at least for me, that'll be September, then there's going to be, I'm excited to see like the flood of new
Right.
work.
Hmm.
Um, so it's going to take a while to even out, I think. But you know what? The other thing I want to mention too, in light of the pandemic and in light of things opening up, is that I think we have a really good opportunity in every industry to really lean into a little bit of reinvention.
Hmm.
So if you're someone who has in the past, badmouthed your competition, which by the way is a bad, bad, bad look and makes you
Bad
look
plan.
small and petty, please don't do it. But if you have, maybe now is a good time to say, hey, future me doesn't do that anymore. Future
Hmm.
me makes friends with those people if they're good people. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? This is a time to turn things around, because do you remember 2019? I don't so much.
Yeah.
2020 was like a big weird blur. So if you want to come out of the gate this year with a fresh new haircut and new glasses, look, I got
Yes,
glasses in the
rocket
pandemic.
them. Yeah.
Thank you. Then this is your time. If you want to be a different kind of business owner, now is the time, because
Yes.
people's memories are short
Hmm. And
and
so many
fading.
people have gone out of business or
That's true too.
pivoted to something totally different.
Yes.
You know, I mean,
Yes.
I don't think the word pivot is
Mm,
even, I don't think they're using the definition correctly, because you changed so much. That's not a pivot. That's a change in direction.
yeah.
There's a big
That's a whole
difference.
fresh start. Yeah.
Yeah, whole fresh start. You need to put a whole new name on that business, because you're not doing
Right.
what you were doing before this hit.
Yeah, and I also think too, we're going to probably see. I believe we're going to see another wave of people going out of business in like another
Yeah,
9 to 12 months,
I
because
agree.
we're going to see people who are holding on to service these contracts and then be like, you know what, I'm good,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I don't blame them.
they
It's been
figured
a
out
lot.
something else to handle cash flow in the
Totally,
meantime, and they just move on. Yeah,
totally.
I think you're right. I mean, we've seen a couple of caterers here like that
Yeah,
are just like,
caterers. Yeah,
we're keeping our core staff that's been our full-time people for years, and we're going to finish out what we've got on the books, but then we're
yeah.
going back to small corporate things
Yes. See,
that
in
we can
LA,
do.
a lot of our caterers moved into production, so they start doing like production catering for TV and film. And one of my, like, love them, use them since day one caterers. Like, they literally did my first full planning wedding with me 12 years ago. I tried to book them for a December wedding, and they're like, you know what? We're just gonna do production. And I'm like, oh, like I'm sad for me because I don't
Right.
get to use them anymore. But it's like they're figured out another revenue stream, like you said. And weddings specifically are tough.
They are.
And if you can do something else and be satisfied and be lucrative and have a good life, Godspeed.
Yeah, go for it.
Go for it.
I end every episode with a couple of questions that have nothing to do with marketing. It's
Oh, I
just to
love it.
get to know my guest better, and a little bit selfish, give me something new to hear about. So, if you don't mind, we'll dive
Yes,
into that.
do it.
So, the first one is, I used to call this my Netflix question, but now there's so many streaming platforms. It's just, what movie or series out there that you like to stream or binge would you recommend coming out of this crazy world we've been living in? We've all found these new things to watch. I feel like I've watched everything there is until
Yeah.
somebody on the podcast recommends one I haven't heard of. And I'm like, oh, I got to go binge that one now because they said that was a good one.
So this is not news to anyone who knows me, but I have a very deep obsession with the TV show Schitt's Creek, like
Uh,
obsessed with it. Like, they think they're my friends, and I've watched it so often that I like just talk. I just mouth the lines. But I can't even call that a binge anymore. That's just like my life.
that's, yeah.
Um, I go into these weird things where, like, I have a home office, and we've been home for so long. So I like to just move myself to a different part of the house with my laptop and just be like, I'm working on the couch today. And when I do that and my husband's not around, I will just put on something that's like silly. And so lately it's been New Girl,
Ah,
which is a show that I never watched when it was on the first time, and
mm,
actually thought that it was kind of like, this is going to be dumb. And now I'm like very into it.
yeah.
But I also go back to like Gilmore Girls and binge that, like those are things Renee binges on her own.
Yeah.
When I'm with my husband, we will pick a show to watch together. So we just finished Mayor of Easttown, which was exceptional.
I need to check that out. I've had a couple of
So
people
good.
tell me, and I don't even know anything about it, but I've
I'm not
heard the
going to tell you
name.
anything because it's sort of a mystery, but
Yeah.
Kate Winslet is a goddess and the whole thing is just so well done. But we watch a lot of like drama, mystery, true crime. We were watching Dirty John based on the
Yeah.
podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am that basic white girl who's like, oh, is it true crime? Sign me up.
I'm in. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
in. So yeah, stuff like
I'm
that.
gonna figure it out before they tell me who it is.
Oh, my husband does. And it's so annoying because we'll be watching it and he'll go, oh, and I'm like, no, don't tell me. And then he won't tell me, but then I will know the whole time that he has figured it out. And that's even more annoying. So
That's so good.
yeah.
That's so good. Well, it's funny. The one of our full time girls here carries the Schitt's Creek coffee mug every day.
Yeah.
So every day she's got it going. There you go.
People, but I have so many Schitt's Creek things because people send them to me and I love it. But it's getting
Hey,
a little,
it's
getting a
that's
little
one of those
insane.
things that's kind of like me back here with all the presidential memorabilia behind me.
Yes.
I'm real easy to buy for. Like if there's something coming up,
Yes.
you just get something presidential seal on it, and Greg will
Yes.
probably think that you were cool.
One
So
of my mastermind students, I don't know if you can see this, it's Rose Apothecary lip balm. and she bought it for me for Christmas, and it just, I mean, I've used it already, but it just
That's
sits.
awesome. That's awesome. All right, the last question, I've been asking this one for a very long time. This goes
Oh,
back to my fraternity days at
uh-oh.
Samford University, and we had to do these questions as a freshman to get to know all the upperclassmen better, and you had to come up with some of your questions on your own. And so the
Okay.
one that I came up with that I liked and I still ask now, even on my podcast 20 years later, is if you were on a deserted island, stranded, and a record player somehow magically survived and only one album survived the crash, what could you be okay with having to listen to over and over as your only source of music on this island?
Oh my gosh, only one?
Only one. No
Oh,
mixtapes, no recording it yourself. It's an album, so it's got to be one that will play on the old vinyl.
it's so tough for me because of my musical theater
Yeah.
background. Like, I just want to say Hamilton, but I also, because I don't think I'd get tired of it. But also, I feel like when I say that, because Hamilton's not my favorite show, it's just
Hmm.
a brilliant recording and it's very
Right.
complicated musically. But I feel like all my other favorite shows are like, wait, what about
Wait.
me?
Yeah.
What about
Hey.
me? And then that doesn't even account like for all like the female singers that I love. So I guess Hamilton. I feel like that's a cop out answer. It's
Begrudgingly, it's Hamilton.
yeah, it's like also like Sunday in the Park with George, and then it's also like any Sarah Bareilles album,
Yeah.
Ani DeFranco. I mean, it could be. There's so many people it could be.
Those are good. Those are really good. I have the record player just off to my left here, off
Nice.
screen, and it's pretty much going all day. And the only thing I told SK yesterday that if I could just figure out a way, and I'm sure it exists, it probably just costs way more money than the one that I have, but I would love to have like the jukebox where it automatically
The
flips
stack.
the
Yeah.
record for me or stack them,
Yes.
because there's nothing worse than there's only like 3 or 4 songs on a side to an
I
album.
know. And then you
And
get the
I get into a groove, and then I like got to get up and flip it. And she's like, well, that's just making you get your steps in every day. Like you're having to get up and walk those
I like
5
that
steps over.
perspective. That's a very positive perspective.
It's making you stand up, stretch your
Yeah, you got to
back.
work for that music. You can't just Spotify that shit. You got to get up and
No,
work for it.
no. I listen to the Sirius XM in the car, but in the office, I've got a vinyl record playing
I
pretty
love that.
much
I
all
have
day,
my
every day.
vinyl player in the bedroom, and I have this little reading nook, and that's where that lives.
Perfect.
Um, I was a kid. This is a little funny tidbit. So when I was a kid, my parents bought me this Fisher Price record player,
Mm-hmm.
and it had a handle, and so I was like a very musical kid, obviously. And I had all these 45s, and I was too young. I could not read, but I knew what my name looked like. So my mom would write my name on the side of the 45. That was the song I liked. And I would run around the house with my record player, plugging it in different rooms because I wanted to listen wherever I was playing. And I was like 5 or whatever.
That's
So
awesome.
I've always been a vinyl girl.
That my parents had the big like bookcase looking
Yes.
thing with the door that raised up and was
Yes.
kind of hiding the record player and the
Were
eight
you
track.
allowed to touch it? Because I was never allowed to touch
I
the real
I
record player.
I technically wasn't, but my parents didn't get home for about 3 hours after we got home from
Oh,
school.
so game's
And
on.
so
Yeah.
that's why I think I love classic rock. Like I grew up
Yes.
listening to all of my dad's albums, which are now sitting over here.
I love
When
that.
my mom passed and he downsized the house, he gave me all
We're
of his
like, give him here.
vinyl, and I was like, he's like, you've probably never listened to these. I was like, oh, for years I was listening to those, but I wasn't
No,
supposed
I've never listened to
to.
how does this work? Yeah.
So it's great. It's fun. This has been a fun combo though. And I know that this is going to be a big hit when it comes out. And I'm looking forward to just seeing what all you do and looking forward to seeing you live in Vegas.
Oh, I'll see you in Vegas. Isn't it
Yeah.
so exciting?
Yeah. It's, are you going where, I know you said you're out on the road a lot in the coming months. Where else are you going to be? Just tell the audience where else they can kind of see
I'm
you
going to
out
be
on the
in
road.
Vegas and then Nebraska,
Mm-hmm.
Omaha, Nebraska for a WIPA town hall. They're opening a new WIPA chapter there. We're very excited. I'm going to be at TSC Cater Source in Miami. Are you guys going to
I might
Cater
see
Source?
you there. Cece will
Oh,
definitely be there, and it's
I'll see
still
you
up
then.
in the air whether I'm coming or not.
I'll be there the
So
whole week.
yeah,
And then I don't really know what's happening between July and November because my weddings kick up again, but definitely Wedding MBA in November. I'll be
yeah,
there the whole week. We have a lot planned for that week.
yeah. I'll definitely be there that week. Cece and I are
Yay.
both speaking there, so we'll
Love it.
both be there. So thank you so much for being here and being a guest, and I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule for me.
I appreciate you. Thank
All
you.
right, have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Was it too long? I felt like we
No,
were going long, and then
no, no, it was good.
okay.
I like if we're flowing, I just let it go, and then Brandon does a really good job of kind of taking out the dead air
Oh, cool.
and getting that out. So,
Good.
And just so you know, I mean, you've been doing this way longer than me, but I don't put too many of these in the can. I'm only about 2 to 3 weeks out.
Right.
So within 2 to 3 weeks, I'll be sending you some graphics, and please feel free to change them to your branding if you so choose when I
Yeah.
send them over. I'm not picky about them all being in my blue GT marketing color. That's what I send them over in, but feel free to drop them into Canva and change them to something that fits your
Okay.
aesthetic better. So, but I'll generally send those over on a Monday or Tuesday. We try to get them out every Tuesday, but it seems
Okay.
like today the one was pre-scheduled to drop and it hasn't hit any of them yet. It hadn't hit
Mm.
any of the platforms. So
It's so weird how that works. We try to do it in the middle of the night so that if there's a delay, it happens overnight. And then
that's what
even
we've been.
sometimes
We
I
had it
wake up.
scheduled for midnight, and before you and I got on today, it still wasn't showing on
I think
iTunes.
everyone does that, and that's why
Yeah.
sometimes it
So
doesn't. It
it
doesn't
has
work.
worked 3 straight weeks. It's been there when I wake up, and
Yeah.
then today not.
Yeah.
But
Podcasting is
today
super weird.
today is Mike McAllowitz is my guest on the episode that's going live today. I don't know if you know
I
him,
don't know
that
him. Who is he?
the author of Profit First,
Oh, that guy.
that guy. Yeah, so
Wow.
definitely probably the biggest like name. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't have the biggest following. I think he only has like 11,000 followers or something on Instagram,
No.
but it's because like you, like people don't recognize him by the name. But if you say Profit First or Clockwork
Right. Like,
or
oh, that guy.
the Pumpkin Patch guy, you're like, oh
You know what's
yeah,
funny though? Like the people I've had even on my show, like when I had David Tutera on my show, I thought for sure that was going to be like my highest rated episode, the most listened to.
no,
No, because I mean, I don't know about Mike, but David, like his people promoted it like once,
yeah,
right? And I was like, but if his people knew that he was on it, because it was a great interview, I was like, they'd listen, but they just don't always
right.
do that.
Well,
And like Tarika's episode of my show is downloaded far more than his.
mhm.
So it's funny to see on the back end,
But
like who
it's
hits
because
and who.
she's got probably got that loyal community too that'll go and listen to anything she's doing, as opposed to David. I mean, they know they're going to see him at Wedding MBA, and
Right.
it's kind of like Cece hosted him on Clubhouse, and the
Yeah.
first time when he was just getting on, it was huge. There were hundreds of
Yeah.
people in the room, and it was a big deal. She had him back in her club, and there was less people than are on there when it's just her giving 3 tips for the day.
The thing about David that's interesting, and then I promise I won't talk your ear off, is that he has a really people admire him, but they don't feel connected to him.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's not like with Cece where they're like, oh my God, I know Cece and I love Cece. They just feel like, oh, David is over there and he's
right,
lovely.
right.
Right. It's a
Hmm.
different energy. And it's something that I'm starting to figure out as we like
Yeah,
as I become more in the education space and more of a public speaker. It's like the people who show up for me are the people who feel like they know me.
hmm yeah. And it's funny that you say that because my highest rated episode right now is Meryl Snow, and
Interesting.
not surprising. She
Not
has a good
surprising.
good local following as well, and
Yeah.
was willing to promote it. To your
That's the
point,
thing too.
she
Yeah.
promoted it like crazy on her side when it came
Yeah.
out, and then a couple of times I've done like the last 3 people on the, do like a little graphic with the last 3 people that have been on there,
Yeah.
and she like shared the crap out of that one too when I
Yeah.
reshared it. She was like, "Oh,
It's all
hey,
about promotion.
yeah."
Cause like, yeah, and it's also about like, so like I have 3 different Instagram accounts. It's stupid. But the Moxie Bread account has more people on it, but it's more wedding planning people. So when I share something to the Renee Dalo account, we
Mhm.
get more people actually engaging with it because they're there for education.
Yeah,
Whereas I put it, because sometimes people will be like, oh, well, promote it on your Moxie Bread account, because to the outside, they're like, well, that has more reach. It's like, yeah, but those are wedding clients. Like they
right.
don't care if I'm on an industry podcast. But
Mhm.
my 1,082 people on the Renee Dalo, they all will go click on it.
That's what they're
So it's
there
like
for.
that's
Yep.
what they're there for. And that's why we did it, because Megan was the one who was like, your Instagram is ridiculous. Like you need an Instagram that's just your name. And I was like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
But like everything else, Megan's right. So
Yeah, and we're balancing that even with CC too. We've
I'm sure,
for
especially with the
years
show, right? So it's like
trying to
when
figure
that
it out.
happens,
Yeah, so
it's gonna blow up.
ugh.
Anyway, I'll let you go. Thank you
Hey,
for
thank
this.
you.
So
Appreciate you.
cool.
Yeah,
Talk to you
I'll
soon.
send it out as soon as I have it done.
Okay,
Thanks.
thanks.
Bye.
Bye.